Hi everyone, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and I specialize in anatomy. And if you've ever seen any of the videos here on my YouTube channel, you know I like to integrate anatomy in sequences in interesting ways. And so today what I wanted to do is show you kind of a neat way that you can cue people around strengthening muscles on their outer hips. So to start out, let's take a look at what muscles we're talking about. So if we come over here to the skeleton and we look at the pelvis, we've got muscles that are on the lateral aspect of the hip, and they are primarily the gluteus medius, the gluteus minimus, which is underneath, the tensor fasciae lata, and the IT band, which inserts on the knee. Now, for this conversation and for what I'm going to show you, we're primarily focusing on glute minimus and glute medius. However, because everything's connected, we're also going to derive some benefit to those other muscles. And so that's one of the really wonderful things about yoga practice, is that we're strengthening and lengthening kind of everything that's in that kinetic chain. So here the kinetic chain really is represented by all those muscles that I just outlined, which are on the lateral aspect of the thigh. Now, when you look at the pelvis, those muscles are responsible for keeping the pelvis level. And certainly there are postures where we're tipping the pelvis intentionally, but there are other poses where we don't want the pelvis to tip. And a lot of those poses are balancing postures. If I have somebody come into tree pose, I don't want them to tip their pelvis to the side. I want them to use those lateral stabilizers to keep the pelvis more level. So one way that you can integrate this into your teaching is you can do something that's kind of something that we do in personal training. I have my certified personal trainer certification from NASM, and even though I don't work as a personal trainer, I have continued my studies by getting other certifications from them and just keeping up with the latest in science and research and how that all plays out in actual exercise technique. And so one exercise technique is known as the step up. And when we do the step up, we are not only working to strengthen muscles like the gluteus maximus, which is a hip extensor, but we're also, if we hold it in the context of a yoga practice or a yoga exercise, looking to stabilize the pelvis, and therefore we're strengthening those muscles on the lateral aspect of the hip. So if you have somebody step up onto the block and let their other foot obviously hang down, the idea is to keep the pelvis level. So what they'll need to do, what I'm doing here, is root down into the standing leg, draw the belly button in a little bit, and hug the sides of the body in. This will maintain the levelness of the pelvis. You could have them do whatever with their arms. Their arms are kind of less of the issue here. You can see it's challenging. And then of course they'd switch. Now what I did when I taught this the other night is I did 2 sets and I held them for about 5 seconds on each side. And you just want to be sure that they keep their gaze straight ahead so that their head is centered over their body. You can cue them to hug in, you can cue them to feel if the pelvis is level, you could cue them to draw the belly button into the spine, which will engage the rectus abdominis. And I can tell you from the students that were in my class the other day, they really felt it. You know, you can think about this too in terms of your relationship to gravity. If I have you on your side and we're doing leg lifts, that's one way to strengthen these muscles. I can even integrate that into this exercise by having people step up, maintain the level pelvis, and then do some kickouts to the side. So now I'm creating, through dynamic movement, an opportunity to strengthen those muscles as well. So as I take the hip into abduction on this side, I'm strengthening those lateral stabilizers. As I work to keep this hip level with this one, as this leg is moving, I stabilize the lateral stabilizers, or I strengthen the lateral stabilizers on this side. So it's a really good exercise to integrate into a yoga practice. You could do it as part of your balancing sequence that will really help them strengthen these outer hip muscles. So I hope you've enjoyed this. One thing I would say is that if you're studying anatomy and you're kind of out there on your own and you're trying to figure out what really should I be learning, I'm going to attach to this video a link to one of my most popular downloads, which is basically 10 key steps to learning anatomy. It's really important for yoga teachers if they're going to try to go it alone and study anatomy, which I know a lot of you are doing. You took your 200-hour training, you don't feel like you learned a lot of anatomy, and so now you're out there on your own trying to figure it out. One of the things that's really important is that you actually have a step-by-step process that you're going through. It's really hard to learn anatomy if you're doing a deep dive into the spine and learning something about the rotator cuff and then learning something about the hip. It's much easier and less stressful if you go in a step-by-step process. Now you may say, that sounds great, but what steps should I follow? And that's why I want you to download this PDF. So it's right on my homepage, barebonesyoga.com, and you'll see 10 key steps to learning anatomy. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to attach it to this video to make it really easy for you to get. If you have any questions, please leave a comment to this video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one when I post it. Thank you so much for watching. Namaste.